With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the voice of wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on China is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday, 6:30, and I have the privilege and pleasure to join you once again. And I say that sincerely because, as I repeat often, I'm called the voice of wisdom. I had a radio program for years with my wife called The Voice of Wisdom. Finally, my daughters said she should stop bringing me coffee and just serving as my servant during the broadcast, and that she should talk. Once she started talking, I hardly got a word in edgewise, but she was brilliant, and it was great to invite her to join me. But they renamed the program Morty Davis, the Voice of Wisdom, and Rosie Davis, the real voice of wisdom. So I have the privilege and pleasure. My wife, unfortunately, I lost 3 years ago, but I have the pleasure to have a super replacement, a genius, a charming guy, Len Carter, who joins me this week again. I don't want to invite others. Others have volunteered to join me, and some of them are very good. But Len is the best. As I told you, he's a graduate of the same university, business school, Harvard Business School, as I was. I graduated with distinction, top of my class. He did too. Before that, he was a graduate engineer at Cornell, and after that, he was he got a master's, or was it a master's? A master's in engineering at Stanford. So he went to three of the best universities, the three best universities maybe in the whole United States. Anyway, so it's my privilege and pleasure to have him join me, and it should be your pleasure. What's going on? Are we being attacked again? It's warning us about the bombings coming. It's no joke. Anyway, before I get into the subjects, the current subjects, the current events that we talk about every week, the timely events, I like to give you some lift, some way to encourage you to be happier. The best way is for you to get my book, Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. And I tell you that because I get so many calls regularly from people that bought the book, or mostly tons of them seem to have gotten as presents, as gifts. One CEO, one president of a Fortune 100 company told me he sent out over 1,000 books as gifts because he loves the books. His family, his two boys and his wife, the first time he turned off the television and said he wants to read them something, they rebelled. They said, "Dad, that's our favorite program where you're turning off." He said, "Well, I'll DVR it for you. I'll record it for you. But I want you to listen to one page because it's made up of 365 pages. One page to advise you on how to be happy, and offer some humor on each page and so forth. So he tells me he's gotten more feedback because he sends out thousands of gifts every year. Most of the time, somebody calls back immediately after they get the gift and say thank you. And most of them just forget about even saying thank you. But in this case, he says they're not only calling him back after a while and saying thank you, but during the course of the years, 3 months, 6 months later, he says, I'm getting calls and they're telling me how inspiring they find the book, how much happier they are today, how much more content they are. So I give you the best proposition in the world only because I love you as my cohorts on this program. And I want you to be happy more than anything. I want you to be content. Happy is maybe a too strong a word because you can't be happy all the time. But if you're content, if you're satisfied, if you're not miserable, if you're not to focus on all the negatives, then that's true happiness. If you're counting your blessings every day, if you just spend your time counting your blessings, writing them down, even during the toughest times, you'd appreciate the blessing you have being brought into this world in God's image. God says you were created in his image, every one of you. And how lucky you are to have the experiences that this world offers us. Even the negative experiences teach us things if we're smart enough to take advantage of it. As I mentioned in the past to this audience, the Chinese have the same word for disappointment or failure and opportunity. Every negative has a positive. You got to learn how to take the negatives and make it a positive. You got to learn to avoid letting your mind delve on the negatives. Most of us do that. We go back to places and we say, oh, shucks, I own that stock at $2 and it's now $250 and I sold it before. Or they look back at things that depress them. If only I did this, if only a job that I switched from, I could have been way ahead of the game. It was a mistake. Don't look back. Don't second guess yourself. Look forward. Do the things that will make your life happier from today on. And whenever you get depressed, do something that's instantly switch gears to something that will make you happy. If you love your wife, make love. If you love your kids, go hug them. All will give you a kind of lift that you can't get anywhere else. What I told you in the past, whenever I get depressed and see that I'm focusing on negatives or it's occupying my mind much more than it is necessary, I run down to my freezer and I get a bunch of Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream with chocolate syrup, with nuts and whipped cream and a cherry on top. What's a cherry called?
Maraschino cherry.
Maraschino cherry. And I'm in heaven. I'm in paradise. I'm in Gan Eden. So switch gears, watch a movie, take a walk, enjoy nature, visit a friend who you encourage, who encourages you. There's so many ways to change your mood positively. And also think of when I visit a friend who's in trouble and has difficulty, I don't go and say to him, oh, this will pass, or don't worry about it. It's only temporary. It'll pass. I start to talk to him about the plans he and I talked about going skiing in the Vermont in December, or playing tennis in the spring outdoors. All the things that he and I love to do, and we're not doing it right now because we're focused on the negatives, or we're going through a hard time. So do that. And I have to point out to you, it's not wealth, it's not money. And if you ever needed proof, the United States is the wealthiest country in the world, the most blessed nation in the world. We have more natural resources domestically. We could get along without any other country if we had to. Very few countries have that prerogative. We have all kinds of natural resources. We have tremendous agricultural production. We have tremendous manufacturing capacity. We have everything you could think of. We're the wealthiest country in the world. And the survey just came out, the survey every 3 years, the valuation of country's happiness. Not the valuation, the numerical position. So Finland is number one. The Scandinavian countries are number one. Remarkably, Israel, with all its headaches, is number 5. It's up from 10 a few years ago. And the United States keeps moving down. It was the last time I think the survey was out, it was like 14 or 15 or 16. It's just come through in the latest survey as 23, the wealthiest country in the world. We should be number 1. We have everything that anybody could possibly want. Even the poorest person in this country with food stamps can get the best food, the best choice, with a cheap television that they could buy for $75 now. They could watch every kind of entertainment, sports, soap operas, music, endless. And still, why are we so unhappy? Especially, what's most depressing is amongst our young people. I think up in between 15 and
30.
30, 15 and 30, our young people, maybe even younger than that, come out 63 in the world. They're way down with backward countries, with Afghanistan, with China, with countries that don't treat their people well. And here, our young people are 63. How is Israel number 5 when it has always perennial headaches with its neighbors? The difference is our young people are busy. Unfortunately, unlike when I was a kid, we're out playing outdoors. We played with our friends. We weren't tied up with a computer or internet or electronic games. Today, the kids spend all day long either on their phone or on the internet or playing these electronic games. I mean, it's not terrible that they're playing the games, but they do it hour after hour. And the difference is in Israel, the kids are taught to stress learning and studying and reading. So they read novels, they get enjoyment out of things that improve them as people. And they also visit with each other. It's a country where people visit with each other all the time, eat together with their friends. That's what it takes to be happy. And our kids don't even eat together with their own family, hardly ever. So we got to learn how to be happier, especially since we're so wealthy. We should use our wealth in a much more productive way. The reason I told you to get this book, it's a no-brainer, as I said, unlike any other product that you see that promotes their whatever it is, their supplement, their drug, their exercise, their diet. They always tell you, if you're not happy, you could return the product, or you could write us, and you don't even have to return the product. We'll send us your purchase slip, and we'll send you back your purchase price. And I'm telling you, you could get a deal from me because it's so positive. I've never had to do it once so far. As I keep announcing it, I'm sure somebody's going to buy $100 and send them all back to me, because I said I'll not only return your purchase price, but I'll return double your purchase price, because I'm so positive you'll appreciate it and thank me for it. And you won't think, even if you get 5 times your money back, you wouldn't want to return the book. And you wouldn't even have to return the book. If you tell me that you bought it and you're not enjoying it, you're not benefiting from it, I'll take your word and I'll send you back double your purchase price. Anyway, enough about happiness. Now we could get back to our misery. Current events and what's it called? Civic. What did they teach in school? Civic. When you're talking about government and
Civics.
civics, yeah, current civics, current events, current news. So let's start.
So
I don't want to take the whole time. We only have an hour away from my brilliant partner here and do a monologue. So let me have you enjoy him.
So let's talk about the country that came in at 60 on the World Happiness List, which is China.
Yeah.
Something that has been in the news a lot. The presidential candidates all have strong opinions on China. It's a campaign platform. Maybe
You're number 60?
Yeah. So
I find that strange, because every Chinaman I've ever dealt with, or that I know, is always smiling. I don't know. I thought smiling means you're happy. But the country as a whole is number 60. I guess when I don't see them, or in the United States.
Well, what do they say?
happier.
The only happy people you know
Yeah.
are the ones you don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
So, as they say, economically in the news, politically in the news. Last year we had the whole security thing with the balloon that was flying over the country. So let's start with
balloons used to be fun.
Yeah.
You meant the Chinese balloon that was
that weather balloon, alleged weather balloon that was shot down.
Well, it wasn't shut down.
Eventually, they shot it down over the East Coast. Yeah, they let it float over the mainland and then shot it down over the ocean.
I didn't know you had to shoot a balloon down. I used to just stick a pin in.
That's basically what they did, except the pin was a missile. So let's start with some of the basics, I guess, that we hear a lot about, which is, Americans buying more from China than China's buying from America in terms of trade. I mean, these days you look around your house, you look around outside, and almost everything is made in China.
You go to Walmart, you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, Target. Most of the products you get at the very compelling prices as a result of the work that the Chinese do at a fraction of what our employees.
So every month we read about a trade deficit where more is coming in than going out. So, some people say that's a good thing. Some people say that's a bad thing. Is it? You think is it dangerous? You think that we have that deficit with China?
I don't think it's dangerous. For years, on Wall Street, we used to worry. We saw the trade deficit, and as soon as the trade deficit came out, it used to go down. The market used to go down, and we thought that was terrible. For a while, it was the Japanese that were getting the big benefit of selling us much more than selling us more cars, more toys, more different things. And after that, it was the Chinese. And in each case, they were providing us products at prices that we loved and we needed and we enjoyed. After a while, the deficits kept getting bigger and bigger. The markets kept doing better, and nobody even noticed when the trade deficit was announced that it was bigger or smaller. For years, all we had is enormous trade deficits.
So why do you think people were nervous about that? I mean, what is it? Just the idea that when you're buying more than you're selling? Is that just something people don't like? What did they think was bad about it?
First of all, we became too dependent on them for things that we should not have depended. Even now, we're dependent remarkably on Taiwan, that produces something like 90% of the critical chips. What are they called? Semiconductors. They're going to every product more and more now with the artificial intelligence and with the bitcoins and those chips are the vital life of all these products. Your automobile has tons of them, unlike in the old days. So during the pandemic, we found out there were things that we didn't have any of because we always depended on the quick delivery from China.
Well, medicines,
masks. We didn't gloves. We didn't have anything.
Respirators.
And so, and during a critical time when we need certain weapons or parts for our military equipment or our automobiles or our airplanes, we became too dependent, and that was a mistake. So you can overdo a good thing, but basically, what Trump raised the tariffs, put tariffs on Chinese goods. Immediately, we had inflation, almost immediately, because all the things that we get out of the best places to buy, most of the things that we buy every day, other than food, is brought in from China and appears at Walmart and Target and Home Depot and Dollar Store. And so that was the whole idea of Adam Smith, that let other people do what they do best and can produce at a better price than you can, and you produce what you can and make available to other people. And that's what capitalism is all about. And all of a sudden, we reject capitalism.
So let's talk about the Chinese tariffs. Trump was a big proponent of taxing Chinese goods to show them that.
I think that still exists.
Yes, Biden did not remove them. So here's an article. We can debate this now. So it's an article from Newsweek recently. It's entitled "Sorry, Democrats and Free Trade Republicans, Trump's Tariffs Worked." So he cites he cites a few things. I'll read what he says, and we'll see if it makes any sense. So he says the big tariff increases took place in early 2018 and 2019, well before inflation accelerated in March 2021. In 2023, the Federal Reserve Bank San Francisco found that stimulus checks and pandemic lockdowns that disrupted Asian supply chains and drove up um,
Consumer product prices.
steel
Steel.
tariffs enacted in 2018 led to more investment, new high-tech steel mills, and thousands more jobs. On average, the big four U.S. steel companies pay six-figure salaries to workers, so growing steel companies increase incomes and opportunities for the working class, which has suffered 30 years of factory losses. Then he says the 2018 washing machine tariffs led two Korean manufacturers, Samsung and LG, to open manufacturing plants in the U.S., one in Tennessee and the other in South Carolina. They employed about 1,000 people, creating jobs and contributing to local prosperity outside of crowded and expensive urban areas. In both cases, prices rose briefly, but then settled back to pre-tariff levels due to competition. In case after case, it's become clear that tariffs' impact on prices is transient and short-lived. Another example includes generator manufacturer Generac. They moved the production of home generators from China to South Carolina in 2021, hiring 750 workers. GE Appliance, which is today owned by Chinese multinational Haier, moved the production of four-door refrigerators from China to Kentucky, hiring 245 workers. Furniture maker Williams-Sonoma expanded its Tupelo, Mississippi facility with the creation of 350 new jobs to make furniture once made in China. Between 2017 and 2023, Williams-Sonoma profit went from $309 million to $950 million.
Which one?
Williams-Sonoma, the one that moved the furniture manufacturer to Kentucky.
A foreign company moved it? Or?
No, Williams-Sonoma is a U.S. company, but they used to make furniture or buy furniture in China, and they moved the facility to Kentucky. It created 350 jobs, and their profits went up. So it wasn't like it was a bad thing. Then this month, he writes, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen cautiously admitted that U.S. electric vehicles might need tariffs if Washington thinks we should have an automobile industry. Recently, Donald Trump, who
I heard of him.
Yes, he says we should have a 100% tariff on Chinese cars coming from Mexico. And that wasn't even his idea. Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri, proposed this in a bill a few months ago. So, and a lot of people are saying that Chinese cars would be particularly electric ones, very cheap, and that should be tariffed. So I don't know. Do you think that, I guess there are examples of where you create a barrier to foreign products, and then the companies will respond by, at some point, bringing the production domestic. It's hard to say what the reaction on the other side would be. I know a lot of U.S. products are tariffed overseas. American cars and things like that are very expensive in China.
Those are good points. But maybe the tariffs awakened us to be more competitive. But we should have been doing that a long time ago. It also helped that we had a strong economy, and the unions have become much more powerful. So workers are getting paid much more than they were formerly. For years, unions were disappearing. And recently, they've won significant increases particularly in the auto industry. So, competition is supposedly good, I think it's great, and I think it's great that we bring back production to the U.S. I don't know if it necessarily has to be done by other countries raising the tariffs. And if you don't overdo something, it may, in many cases, serve to, to make you aware that. But in any event, the tariffs are paid by the American people, not anybody else. So they put on a tariff on products that we buy. It's only products that we buy and have delivered to the U.S. that have tariffs, and it means it costs American consumers
and
more.
right. I mean, just because these examples that this author cites are all related to creating jobs because the American manufacturer could now compete. So what's not mentioned here, as you say, is that while this may be good for the worker at Williams-Sonoma, because now he or she can be paid more, it doesn't say if that's good for the consumer, because and the fact that Williams-Sonoma's profit went from 309 million to 950 million likely means that they got more revenues from consumers. So while it may be good for workers,
we have to see what happened to the prices.
Right. That's the real question is how does it, I mean, it's always, almost everything and almost every economic policy has a benefit to some and a detriment to others. So it's just a question of, are you benefiting more workers than you're hurting consumers? And, I think that, I don't know if that analysis was ever done.
Look, Apple and Google and Facebook are domestic companies, and now they're all being hit with monopoly, antitrust, because they are so big and so powerful that they keep, and it seems like they're great, and they're great products and everything, but they keep competition away because they dominate the field and they control even access. In the case of Apple, their apps are necessary for anybody that's selling products on the internet, and Google likewise. So
yeah, I mean, where does just being a great company with great products and market control begin? Apple.
When does it
started,
stop? Yeah, when does it stop?
Apple started. Apple wasn't dominant, not too long ago, and it created a great product, the iPhone, and the fact that everyone wants to use an iPhone and use the platform. Now Apple's being punished for its own success, but then again, whenever has a good deed not gone unpunished?
They dominate the music industry.
Right, but it was they did a good job. So now, because they did a good job, they are being.
They would argue that competition is harmful.
Or they would argue that they're not preventing them from creating their own. No, but they don't have to use Apple. I mean, Apple, it
costs a lot to develop.
But is that Apple's fault? I mean, no one's saying the only platform you can use is Apple. Maybe it's because, Android is just not as good a marketer as Apple, or maybe their features aren't as good, but, there's no it's not like there's a there's a
You're right, but you stop innovation because they can sell it at such a low because they dominate the market. They have the whole market. You can't compete with them price-wise. So the whole thing about the United States and its entrepreneurship is that companies can start out, the tiniest company can come along and compete with the biggest company.
But I mean, maybe that is the, you know, but when AT&T, when the DOJ broke up AT&T,
Yeah.
you know, AT&T had a clear monopoly because the infrastructure, the plant, the wires, the telephone poles, everything that it owned was just so impossible to replicate.
Everything.
But
if you wanted to fix the phone, you had to call American
yes, in
Telephone.
fact, the phone, there used to never be a plug where you could plug in a phone. The phone used to be screwed into the wall, and the wires, because AT&T owned literally end to end, phone to phone. So, that I can understand. But these days, you know, in a digital world, you see companies,
But look at all the progress.
cropping up and sprouting up so quickly. Does Apple really pose the same barrier to entry that AT&T posed? It's not a physical plant. You know, the entry is technology as opposed to like a physical plant investment, which costs billions of dollars.
Well, we don't, like with the chip business. How come we're not the leaders in that field? We were the ones that developed, what's it called again?
Semiconductor chips?
Semiconductors. They were initially, when I came to Wall Street, they were called transistors. And now they were remarkable then, but now they get thousands of wires or whatever on a single chip, smaller than the nails on your fingers. It's a miracle, and we should have been the leaders in that field. And how does Taiwan become 90%? I don't know. It's more negligence in a way. It's not focusing, because we should never be dependent for essential products as we were for 100 years with oil. We were the victims of the Middle Eastern countries and Venezuela and so forth. It's very important for a country, if it can, to be independent with respect to essential products, somewhat independent.
So should the government have a hand in making sure that happens? And
that's what we're doing now.
If it sees that,
absolutely, that Biden set up he's spending billions of dollars to catch up in the
Intel just got a big
enormous
$9-10 billion grant to
enormous.
do. So then those industries, so certain industries, you think should be treated differently than others if they're perceived as a national security need. So companies that make motion pictures can die on the vine, but companies that make semiconductors shouldn't.
National security, because it's different kind of security. When you're talking about the pandemic, that wasn't anything to do with national security. Or in drugs, you're talking about essential products should be, if you find out that the traffic between the countries.
So pharmaceuticals, essential products, motion pictures, not essential products. What about automobiles? So do you let China come in with super cheap cars so that it puts the auto company, the U.S. auto companies out of business?
Look at we did that. I always used to think at the beginning when all of a sudden Toyota and Honda was outselling I said, why do we let them advertise on our television? They're taking away all our business, because it used to be, like the head of General Motors said, what's good for General Motors is good for America. And then we had to become competitive and catch up and made better products and cut the prices. So that's what it's all about.
But in that case, it'll
happen with China too.
But what forced if you propped up the U.S. companies, then where's the incentive to compete and become better and more efficient and innovate?
Well, if they didn't, they'd be out of business.
Not if they're propped up. Not if the government says we're not going to let you go under because we think the car industry is important, or we think pharmaceuticals is important.
Well, in some cases, the government has a view that's broader than we might think. In other words, suppose it wants to create jobs. That's nothing to do with the product. But they say if we lose the auto industry, it's one of the major employers of decent salary. So we got to do something about it, you know. And when the unions lost all their power, it became particularly difficult, because here were some of the highest paying jobs. People in Detroit and other parts of the country, workers, the son, then the grandson, then the great-grandson, all started with GM or Ford and Chrysler and had great jobs and lived their lives dedicated to these companies, because it provided them with good.
I think the goal and role of government in this case should be like a parent teaching his kid to ride a bicycle, like training wheel. Like the government can help and support industries, you know, and sort of get them going, but then at some point you do want to take the training wheels off, let go, and hopefully the industry doesn't fall over and break his head.
Get killed.
Yeah. So, you know.
Oh, that's a fine point. You know,
whether or not you can do that.
But the idea that what's his name has, we have to shrink the government so it could drown in the bathtub. What's the guy's name who's against ever raising taxes?
Yeah, that was.
What's his name?
Grover Norquist.
Norquist. He makes a congressman, or particularly Republicans, sign on that they'll never raise taxes. There's no one action that's always the perfect action. It depends on the times. There's time when government is too intrusive.
So what about investment? You know, a lot of people think, and we saw this in the late 80s and 90s with Japan, when Japan was booming. At one point, the Tokyo Stock Exchange had a bigger market cap than the New York Stock Exchange at one brief point.
Unbelievable.
The Japanese were buying up trophy properties and things. You see some of that happening with China now. You know, do you think that we should limit? Should our domestic policy government, should they limit, you know, the amount of real estate or businesses that Chinese companies can own? Well, is that a danger? Is it a danger?
Start these kind of trade wars with tariffs, with blocking free trade, it comes back to haunt you.
How about investment, though? Like, should you allow Chinese companies to buy apartment buildings around the country, or
If we need
businesses.
if we need more housing, it would be great to have them come along and build a lot of lower cost housing. That would be great, because now rents are prohibitive. People are moving just because they can't afford the rents where they lived for many, many years. So there's no one answer, but you have to take advantage of what trade offers, and if it hurts you, you have to find a way to deal with it. There's no. So I think free trade is very important. Totally free trade, where they undermine industries that you need or jobs that you need, then the government should stay out of it. But otherwise, you wanna have free trade.
One of the big issues that we heard in the Republican debates was who's tougher on China. Nikki Haley is a big believer that China's, a real enemy of the United States. And Ron DeSantis also was sparring with her over who's a bigger fighter against China, and they were each trying to dig each other on how they, DeSantis says to Haley, "You appeared in an ad saying China loves us," and then Haley says to DeSantis, "Well, but you had some deal in Florida with Chinese." So DeSantis talked about how he shut down these things called Confucius Institutes. So Confucius Institutes are like programs sponsored by the Chinese government at various American universities.
Confucius, I have limited knowledge, but I always was under the impression that Confucius offered wisdom that was very beneficial throughout the world.
Right. So that's,
unless they're using it for propaganda.
Well, that's what they say. So, if they sponsor these programs at American universities to promote what they think are Chinese.
If they're abusing our values and our interests, then we should cut them off. It's as simple as that. But you can't just everything that intrudes on your calm behavior. We could use a challenge to our education system. We're not the leading country in the world in terms of educating our young people. At the university level, maybe we're the best, or at least amongst the tops. Maybe Oxford and Cambridge and some others. But we're definitely, but at the lower levels, we're not at all competitive. Our kids can't read overwhelmingly. They can't do math. So I don't know enough about the Confucius thing, but if it's hurtful to this country, we have to do things.
Well, I think.
But we can.
I think whether it's hurtful, I think that's the issue. Is
who makes that decision?
Is it hurtful?
Who makes that decision?
Is a curriculum that tells middle schoolers that it's okay to be transgender, is that hurtful or helpful? So
we depend on Congress and the president's cabinet and so forth to make that decision. If every governor makes it, then it becomes political. When things are political, they're not necessarily in the best interest of the people.
If the university, at least for private universities, you don't have to go to a private university. So if you don't like the fact that this university has a Confucius Institute, then don't send your child to that university. I think where DeSantis is coming out is that on public universities, where a lot of their support and funding is from the state, that he has a right to, have some say in what is there or not there. So, I mean, that's his whole.
I never heard that Confucius industry, Confucius at our universities is a problem, even a challenge. I think maybe our confusing universities are a problem. But
I mean, I think it's the same, it's a view. It's like the next thing, Nikki Haley talked a lot about was China's growing just military aggression around the world. So I guess I wonder there, I'll ask you, what do you think, what I know you have a somewhat of an isolationist view of military foreign policy, the Monroe Doctrine and whatnot, but is there anything that you think China could do?
I also believe that the United States is the most militant country in the world.
Yes.
Much more than we're accusing China, Russia, everybody. We're the biggest armament providers. We've been in more wars than anybody. We've sponsored more wars.
So
always with
best policy,
always with good intentions. We with the Middle East, we had this thing.
Right.
What was it called?
Well, the last I heard, the road to hell was paved with good intentions.
The spring. What was the
Arab Spring?
The Arab Spring. We were going to make them all democracies.
So, if you believe the best approach, at least for dealing with a China aggression, stay out of it and not be involved with it. Was there anything that you think China could do that would justify a U.S. military response?
Yeah, if they took a specific action.
So
example,
invading Taiwan, no.
If they invaded Taiwan,
leave them alone.
No, if they stopped us from getting the semiconductors right now that we find essential, that would be a hostile action.
Even though.
That would be a hostile action. We shouldn't allow it.
Because Taiwan's a supplier to us?
Yes.
So we should defend suppliers?
If it's a critical
So
supplier.
what about a country that supplies oil to us? I mean, we did that that's why we went into Iraq, but.
Well, I thought for the longest time that we let them get away with the murder, Saudi Arabia and all of them, by pushing up prices because of the monopoly, the cartel they set up. In this country, they'd all be in jail.
So you're saying there are times when economic interests justify military response?
Yeah, most of the times. Most of the wars are the result.
Well, but is that something that you think is proper? I mean, should we,
It depends how, always, it's a matter of degree. If they're hurting us competitively and some of our corporations are making much less than they would otherwise, that's not a reason to go to war. If we need some product that some country has that's absolutely essential to us and they're arbitrarily cutting it off, unless we precipitate some action that makes them respond that way, then we should take action, maybe not right away war, but action that shows sanctions, and then ultimately, if it's hurting us that bad, war too.
So an attack
I think
on
no matter what happens, we should defend Brooklyn.
So a Chinese attack on Taiwan would be a function of what the U.S. response would be a function of what China does after it invades Taiwan. If China invades Taiwan, takes it over, but lets the chips come out, then we stay back?
Yeah, I don't think we have a role in that. We
Unle-
shouldn't be,
unless
or in improving the treatment of all the people in every country. We shouldn't be the policeman for the world by going to war against countries.
unless it hurts us, unless the reason for the war affects us economically.
Not affects us, hurts us badly.
Well, that's an effect.
You don't go to war if you're hurt economically.
Well, that's what would happen if China blocked the flow of semiconductors from Taiwan to the U.S. That would be
At this time,
an economic
at this time,
hardship
yes.
for the U.S. So
At this
our
time,
response
yes.
should be a military response.
If we can't get them otherwise, yes. But first, you don't do military. You talk to China, you let them know we're going to put sanctions, we're going to hurt them. I don't think, you need to go to war all the time. We like to go to war because we sell a lot of, what Eisenhower warned us about, the military-industrial complex. We make a lot of money. Every state in the union benefits from the jobs of the defense industry. Every congressman comes back to a state and says, I won defense contracts so that a lot of employment. It's fabulous, but it's not the right thing to do. It doesn't serve the best interests of the people's needs.
So
Lottie,
we have a few minutes.
well,
We have a few minutes
how much do
left,
we have?
about 5
How much?
minutes or so.
Okay.
So let's talk about Europe and Russia and China. So do you think that the U.S. should be nervous or concerned or reactive in any way to what we see as a strengthening tie between Russia and China?
We're obviously nervous about it. If there's some action that they take that actually threatens us, then we should act first by less than war, and then ultimately that's what when
I mean, the fact that China's buying a lot of oil from Russia, that props them up in terms of economics.
That's not how. We have no right to go to war for that. I don't believe we have a right to intrude in that. We may not be happy. It may even lift their Chinese economy above ours. That's not a reason to go to war.
Well, not necessarily war, but do we react in some way?
The way to fight those kind of wars is to improve your own technology to replace it. And that's the motivation to move ahead and to advance. We probably wouldn't have developed solar if we didn't have the motivation. And many new products that will be forthcoming that will replace toxic, poisonous oil. That's important. That's what competition is all about, but not only with respect to the economy and profits, but also to improve the world. How do we work collectively, all the countries? I don't know, for example, the UN. We give so much money to the UN. We've been given money since the end of the Second World War. A lot of other countries. I don't know one thing, at least I can't identify one positive thing that the UN has done since its founding. I mean, we should reorganize it, reinvent it, so that it prevents wars, so that it steps in at critical times to prevent negative things in the world. If it's important to have global warming, then they should be more proactive. They can't run the world, but they can be proactive in conveying ideas and pushing compelling goals that are good for all the people of the world. What is it doing? What's its purpose?
Well, I think that's the problem, is that even if, I don't know if it would be possible to have a body. I mean, it's nice to say, it would be great to have an international body that, would try to espouse and promote peace, and good things in the world. But you see,
I agree with you.
But you see that's not even possible. I mean, look what happens when you have a majority of countries in the UN condemning Israel for trying to defend itself. I mean, you can't say, well, a majority of countries say that Israel shouldn't do this. So I mean, the majority of countries aren't always right. That's the problem.
They find that in the case of Israel, they find out it's the Jews, so it's justified. It's justified.
So that's the problem. Is how do you separate things like anti-Semitism from?
I agree with that. It's not easy. I didn't say it's easy, and I didn't say when you're dealing with human beings, you can put it together and have it work. But it's something we should strive to do. Look, we couldn't even do it within the United States. We had the Civil War. It almost broke up the Union. It's a miracle that it survived, because the people that in the South felt they're entitled to have their slaves. They bought them. They paid for them. They were producing good work for them. What do you come up in the North? Telling us what. So it's never, progress is never easy. But if you mobilize people on a different basis, on how do we together all work together to make the world a better place, our own country and all the world a better place. Let's see if we can do that. It's not easy. We could try. Is it going to work? It didn't work with the League of Nations. It's certainly not working with the United Nations. It may be working somewhat within certain groups, as you point out. For NATO, it may be working for the members of NATO. It doesn't work for the whole world. Russia's not happy with NATO. I don't know that China's happy. I'd like to find a way for the whole world to care about each other, like a family does, But even a family, look at the wars going on in the families. So maybe I'm more hopeful for the progress of human beings than maybe I have a right to be.
All right. So we'll end it with one last question.
That's what I would espouse.
A philosophical, theoretical question. Who do you think China wants to win the 2024 election?
She.
The U.S. presidential election.
I think they'd like to see Xi be the head of it. Who they'd like to see?
Do they think that Trump is better for them? Or do they think that Biden is better?
They can love Trump because he put the tariffs on. It may have hurt them. Their economy's been down after that. It may be coincidence. I don't know how they feel about the Democrats, but they did. She did, according to Trump, he loved she and she loved him. So I don't know what the truth is. Do they have a preference? I don't know. Do you think they have a preference?
They don't. I don't know how much they like. The U.S. The Biden administration is a Taiwan supporter, so they don't like that. although I'm not so sure, and Trump, they don't like his tariffs, but I'm not so sure he would come running to the side of Taiwan.
I don't think he would.
Right. So they like that.
Yes.
They would like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have an answer. That's
Yeah,
why it's the last question.
Probably,
Because I never have answers to the last question. Or the first
Trump
one.
better,
Or any of the ones in between.
No, but I think they like Trump better because of Taiwan. That's a big issue.
Maybe.
What's the other issue that bothers them? That's the big issue. It's always one big issue. Like now, abortions come back to be like a top issue.
Yep, we'll see. It's in the court now, so we'll see what happens with that. Maybe that'll be
Also,
future topics to talk about.
Also, April 15th, if it goes through, is supposed to put Trump on trial
to start the trial.
for crime.
Yep.
That would be the first time
Yep.
a president of the United States was ever
stood trial for a criminal. Yep.
And also the possibility, although I wouldn't bet on it because he's a genius, he and his lawyers, but there's a possibility that that could get resolved, decided before the election, and maybe that would influence the election.
It probably would be. I mean, if it really gets started April 15th, jury selection, if jury selection really starts on April 15th, I mean, it probably should finish in a few months, unless they can delay the trial.
He could make the issue that it's wrong in the midst of a.
Well, that's what he's trying to do. Yeah. But that's the hope with the other trials, is that you get them delayed close enough to the election that you say.
No, maybe.
But I don't know about this. I mean, April 15th.
Maybe if he went to the Supreme Court, they would say it's not that urgent to do it now. Hold it up. Look, he was supposed to pay $400 million. There was no reason that nothing happened in between. They moved the date that he has to move. And look, so if somebody wants to, or what's her name, Cannon, has introduced stuff, hypotheticals, that have nothing to do. She says, how will the jury deal with hypotheticals that maybe he's really entitled to get them? The ridiculous things. That she's not thrown out, that the appeals court under her doesn't dismiss her. She's incompetent, and more than that, she's definitely biased. She says his trial for Mar-a-Lago should happen in 25. She doesn't say we should move the trial. If a guy's innocent, maybe he wants it earlier. So he could win the presidency. Thank you all for joining us. I love you all. I wish you all the best week ever, the best month ever, the best year ever, the best every day of your life. Every day should be better than the day before. God bless you, and have a wonderful life with your loved ones, with your kids, and most importantly, good health. And the way to have good health is to stay upbeat and happy, and don't let you punish you. You're the boss. God made you in his image, but he also gave you control, just like he has. You don't control everything. We all are subject to disappointments, to struggles, to unhappy challenges, but we should take control of our mind and make sure that we make our lives happy. We have a role in that. Not totally, because things could go so bad that no matter what you do, you could be justifiably miserable, but don't let it happen. Fight it. Bounce back. Know that it could be better. Even people that lose a child, sometimes they're so devastated, and then they make a positive out of it by raising funds to cure, if their kid died from cancer, raising funds to have other kids saved from dying of the same disease, or if the kid was hit by a drunken driver, they agitate and save through their efforts other people from getting killed from drunk drivers. Soon we won't have that problem as we have self-driving cars that don't drink. The self-drivers I understand, don't drink. And they don't even get distracted by phone calls or things that distract all of us. Fooling around in the car while we're driving, all the different things. Again, God bless you. I love you. And I look forward to being with you again in good health next Wednesday at 6:30. Bye.